First of all, could you just do a little explanation or just introduce yourself and just give me a little bit of history about your background?
Yes, I went into the law when I was 16, rising 17, having left school. And I went into a solicitor's office, and I was called what I was called an outdoor clerk. So that means I had to run messages and do all that sort of thing. I never made tea. I never made tea, I think, till I was a judge. And then I became what is called an article clerk. They're called trainees nowadays. And I did that for 5 to 6 years and then became a solicitor. Then I went to America to work in a law firm in America, then came back and was a solicitor in Plymouth for 5 years. Then I left that and became a barrister in 1975, and I was a barrister till 1996 when I became a full-time circuit judge. But in 1991, I became what is called an assistant recorder. So you're a sort of part-timer as a learner judge. And I did that for a total of 3 to 4 years and became a recorder, then became a judge. And I sat on the Western Circuit and did crime, family law, and civil law. And I also became a member of the Mental Health Review Tribunal.
All of your varied career, which was your favourite part?
Oh, I think being a judge. I enjoyed that. I felt that I was, in a strange way, doing some good.
Yeah, John, I think from, the reaction that we get from the young people when you come into all the various schools with us over the years, what's your what do you actually take from these sessions?
I take the value of it, actually. I think it's very good. In fact, I think it's essential because these young people really don't know what the likelihood is, what's going to happen to them if they go out with a knife or they commit a sexual offence. And I think these sessions we do are extremely valuable. And I think we ought to do more of them if it's possible, but funding is the greatest problem. But they are very valuable. And what intrigues me is how a lot of them are rather jack the lads. When you call the meeting to order and Tim does his little bit, they soon settle down and really enjoy it. And the demonstrations with the marking with the marker pens is a very valuable exercise because I think it focuses the mind. And it's intriguing to see how, as the sessions go on, they become more and more engaged. From Jack the lads, they become rather focused and interested and ask some very sensible and searching questions.
Could you just give us a little feel about some of the most important questions that you think that you've been asked from the students?
Well, what I find rather amusing is that the questions they all ask is, can they have sex with their girlfriends when they're under 16? That seems to be a recurring question. So it's obviously exercising their minds quite considerably. And I actually think they have not a clue what would happen to them if they go out with a knife. It's not just going to prison or going to a young offender institution. It's the little things like if they are caught in a public place with a knife or a bladed article without a lawful excuse, they won't go to prison necessarily or to a detention and training order. They'll have to put that conviction on any application for a college or university or a job, or even a visa to go to the United States. And if you've got a finding of guilt or conviction, for possession of a bladed article or a knife, you won't get your visa and you won't get your place at college or university. And I don't think that ever occurs to them. The
The
far-reaching.
consequences of actions.
Exactly. And I think one of the best watchwords in our sessions is that expression, a moment of madness. Because that's what it is, really. It's so easy in the heat of the moment, if you've got a knife on you, to pick it up and use it. And it's a matter of centimeters before a fatality can occur.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the best outcomes that we get, is the young people actually realizing how easy it can be to actually kill someone if you carry a knife.
It can happen in seconds. And you can go out for the evening, and that evening can end in complete disaster, not only for you, but then the victim, the victim's family, the family of the offender. Lives are totally changed forever. And I think the best slogan we have is a moment of madness.
Yeah, me too. I think that is quite an apt title.
I think it's an incredibly good title. But I think these sessions are so valuable, particularly as every day we read, in the last 2 days we've read of these knife attacks for, on the face of it, no reason at all.
But when we're teaching, John, and we use like the martial arts expert with Tim, what benefit do you think that brings to the young people?
I think it's a good pocket lesson in self-defense.
I think one of my biggest observations over the last 3 years is when we actually give the students the opportunity to swear on the Bible or take the affirmation. And I was really shocked the amount of people who didn't swear on the Bible.
Yeah, it's understandable, I'm afraid, these days. In a way, it's a rather archaic practice. I think it would be enough if the whole thing was revised for the 21st century to say, I promise that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I think it's all a bit old-fashioned nowadays.
Obviously, today we're making this piece of footage because we're going to be doing a virtual conference on the new legislation which is coming into effect in September for PSHE. So are there any words of advice that you could give to any teachers that are going to be watching this today about how SOS Global teach young people, and and as your role, what advice could you give to any teachers out there today?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is open your doors and let us in. And we will bring the thing alive. But if you can't do that, then teach your young students and pupils the dangers of bullying online, of carrying a knife. There's no reason to carry a knife, because if you carry a knife, as Dino says, if you carry it, you're going to use it. Well, there's a risk you're going to use it. And tell the young people that they can get into serious trouble if they slip up with a girl or allow a girl to have a way with them if she's under 16. It's far-reaching. But teachers can do that themselves. They're highly educated and sensible people. They can have classes where they can do more or less what we can do. But short of inviting us in, that's the next best thing. But you've got to get your students to be aware of the dangers, the far-reaching dangers of breaking the law. Um, the law is there for our benefit and our protection, and it must be respected. But teachers can give that information. And above all, never carry a knife. The definition of offensive weapon has, I think this year or last year, been extended to include, it's now, the definition has been extended to, quote, a highly dangerous weapon whose dangerous nature must be substantially above and beyond a normal bladed article. And it's to cover corrosive substances like acid, and also threatening with a knife or a bladed article. And the word has gone out to the sentencing council that judges must, that the sentences must be increased.
Well, let's John, what do you think is the benefit of us using the video evidence of a knife crime victim and an ex-gang member?
I think they're both very valuable. I think they ought perhaps to be updated if that's possible. But I think Dino tells a horrific and a graphic story of what happened to him. And also the other chap who was an ex-gang member who's never really led a normal, as he said, he never had time for girlfriends. He was either imprisoned or with his gang.
I think the benefit of that piece of footage is to show that if you've got 30 young people all looking at the same thing, and it's just so surprising when we ask how many people were injured in, what was it take? 40 seconds?
Something like that, yeah.
And the difference of all the people saying 2 people, 4 people, 5 people, it's quite, I think the reason why is to show that everybody looks at things in a different way.
You see different things. There was a professor at Harvard University in the States who illustrated this point by getting somebody to rush in and attack a group of students on the stage. And then he asked the class to give their views of what they saw. And there were 50 people in the class. There were almost 50 different explanations.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
So we all see different things and different parts of things.
We do.
And it's very rare for somebody to see the whole of an incident.
Can I just go back to the questions that the students ask? I just wondered if you could just give us a little flavour of some of the questions that you've been asked over the years.
Well, the ones that spring to mind are the people who say, well, they carry a knife to go fishing. Well, that of course isn't offence because you've got a justifiable reason. As I say, there's not much point if you're caught with a knife on the dance floor saying you're coming back from a fishing trip because nobody will believe you. That's one of the questions. That sometimes there are legitimate reasons for carrying a knife. But there are a wide-ranging questions, and I think the idea of getting them to write questions down in advance is a very good one.
I tried to go in beforehand, a couple of weeks beforehand, and tell them, because obviously we don't want them to know it's about knife crime until we introduce everybody, so that they don't have any preconceived ideas about what the lesson's going to be about. So I do recall that you saying to one headmaster many years ago, oh, I think all your students here smoke weed, because all the questions we had were about cannabis misuse.
Yeah, well, that's a recurring theme these days, isn't it? That, it's all right to smoke a weed it is perceived to be all right. It isn't, for a variety of reasons, all of them good ones. But a supply, strangely enough, if you've got a group of people round a circle, and they pass a spliff round, there's an individual supply to each person sitting round the circle. That is an individual supply. So a group of 10 students who are passing a spliff round their group are guilty of perhaps 10 individual offences of supply.
Wow.
It's an extreme example, but it's often one that's given to illustrate what a supply is.
I learn something every time I speak to you, John Neligan. When we get all our feedback, as you know, during the session and after the session, we always do anonymous questionnaires with the students. So how do you feel when, after all of these years, that you always come out top of the pops as being the favourite part of the session?
Well, the reason for that, Dawn, is terribly simple. It's novelty value. It's just novelty value. It's not presentation. It's not great knowledge that I give to them. It's rarity value. I mean, it's like asking a gnome in. If you had a gnome in the session, the gnome would come top because it's a novelty value.
I tend to disagree with you there, young man.
It's different. That's all it is.
In your opinion, from your perspective, the most important thing that SOS Global bring to young people through these workshops?
I think realization, in a word. Realization of what can happen in any situation, whether it's knife, drugs, sex, cybercrime, cyberbullying. It's the greatest gift that SOS Global give is realization. Because in the school day, they probably don't have, the teachers certainly don't have time to teach that sort of thing. And it can crop up incidentally, but we go in and focus minds on certain topics which are everyday life situations. Well, I think that's the most valuable thing, to draw attention to the pitfalls and what can go wrong and what can happen. And it's very valuable work. And I think it needs a higher profile because it is so important.
What is it that motivates you to be involved with what SOS Global are doing?
Well, I don't want to sound horribly pompous when I say this, but I had in all, I should think, 54 years in the law, one way or another, from start to finish. The law was very good to me. It provided me with a good living and a happy life. And I like to put something back into the system. After all, when you're retired, you don't have an awful lot to do unless you make your own things to do. So it's quite nice, actually, to put something back into something when I've drawn out a hell of a lot. That may sound horribly pompous, but it's not intended to be.
Thoughts or feedback you could share on Dawn and the impact you think she has through this work?
I can answer that in a word: enormous. I think she's done enormous work, coming from no base at all to an organisation with minimal help. I mean, we are volunteers, but she does the work, the grind and the graft. And if you're starting anything up, it's a hell of a grind and a graft. And you can get depressed that it isn't working, but she's stuck at it. And I think she's got a very good package there. And I think that it's one that should be exploited more. We've tried, I've written or drafted a letter for her to write to the Police and Crime Commissioner, setting out the good work that's done. And I think like all things, funding is needed. It's probably going to get harder, but it is a resource that is very valuable to the community. And then Dawn is the go-lighter of it, or the steerer, the enabler. And she's got together a very good team.
Okay, Dawn, do you have anything else?
I think really that I just wanted to introduce John so that he can share some of his insights today. And thank you, John, for. I'm really shocked that when you said I'm on Zoom, I was like, I imagined that we were going to traipse to your house and try and video you through the window, and so.
Well, I have a techie wife who is better at organising these things than me.
Oh, well, please thank Mrs. Neligan for me.
Well, thank you all. It's been thoroughly worthwhile and enjoyable.